Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. A place burning with power, politics, and prestige. Where senators and the like played tug-of-war between party lines and sudden, where power moves could make or break your career. Each year hundreds of young men and women lobbied for coveted internships, eager to get their first taste of the world of politics, entering the foray with ambition and dreams, with many leaving broken and disheartened. It was a world where only the strong survived, a cutthroat existence where the weak were eaten alive. For 24-year-old Chandra Levy, being in the middle of it all was a dream come true. She'd landed a paid internship at the Federal Bureau of Investigations as part of her graduate program in public administration. Chandra, who had been assigned to work in public affairs, had created quite a buzz in the department. She had been tasked with handling inquiries about the approaching execution of Timothy McVeigh, the man tried and convicted in the 1995 bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma. Chandra received praise from her superiors and was riding the wave of her newfound notoriety when her internship was suddenly terminated. Because she had completed her graduate program at the end of 2000, she was no longer eligible for the internship. Efforts to secure a permanent position within the federal government proved futile, but Chandra wasn't one to give up. Although she had made plans to return to her family's home in Modesto, California, she was more determined than ever to make a name for herself in the political arena. When Chandra failed to show up in Modesto as planned, they were immediately concerned. It was unlike their daughter to change her plans and not let them know. Furthermore, calls to Chandra's phone went unanswered. After 5 days of not hearing from their daughter, the Levys contacted the police. After adamant assurances from the concerned parents, officers agreed to do a welfare check. After their knocks on the door got no response, the building's superintendent officers into Chandra's apartment. Nothing inside looked suspicious. There were boxes packed on the floor and her suitcases were pushed against the wall. The bed had been made, and there were dirty dishes left in the sink. Her purse was laid out on the bed with what appeared to be her pajamas. It was almost as if Chandra had vanished into thin air without a trace. There were no signs of forced entry or a struggle, which ruled out anything nefarious taking place in the apartment. The Levys contacted area hospitals to see if anyone fitting Chandra's description had been admitted, while police canvassed the area around the apartment, but there were no signs of her. A few days later, Robert Levy, Chandra's father, called police once again, this time providing what could be a viable lead. According to Robert, his daughter was having an affair with a United States congressman. Chandra's and also reached out to law enforcement to reveal that her niece had told her that she was in a relationship with Congressman Gary Condit. Condit, who also hailed from California, was a married man and father to 2 adult children, both of whom were older than the woman he was rumored to be having an affair. With this information, police obtained a search warrant for Chandra's apartment. Inside her purse they found her wallet, cell phone, and credit card still inside. The answering machine was filled with messages from her parents and other family members. Interestingly, there were also messages from none other than Gary Condit. Law enforcement officials were eager to talk to Congressman Condit, and he was more than willing to speak to them upon learning that Chandra was missing. He seemed genuinely concerned about the young intern, whom he described as someone with whom he'd had a close relationship. He denied suggestions that the two had had an affair and criticized the implication that he had anything to do with Chandra's disappearance. The Levy family denounced Condit's efforts to downplay his involvement with Chandra, insisting that it was a full-blown affair. She had shared details with her aunt about her entanglement with the much older congressman, perhaps thinking that he could somehow work his connections to secure her a permanent position within the ranks of the federal government. But nothing had panned out, and Chandra had accepted that she would at least temporarily have to return to Modesto. The Levys believed Condit knew more about Chandra's disappearance, but was too desperate to protect his own image and his wife to be forthcoming with any details that would help find his young mistress. Unfortunately for Condit, once the press learned about the disappearance and his alleged involvement with the intern, There was a feeding frenzy that not only impacted him but reached his family in Modesto as well. As the days went by with no signs of Chandra, there was increased scrutiny on her relationship with Congressman Condit. Had she wanted more from the relationship? Had there been demands made that he couldn't or wouldn't meet? Had Chandra threatened to expose the relationship, which would have placed the congressman's career in jeopardy? Whatever happened, Chandra Levy had seemingly disappeared without a trace. Her parents made media appearances, appealing to the public for any information about their daughter's whereabouts. But as days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, law enforcement classified Chandra as a missing person, with her case status remaining active. Every lead and every tip was followed through, all leading to dead ends. As for Gary Condit, he remained a person of interest, but officials stopped short of calling him a suspect. But the case took a dramatic turn on May 22, 2002. On the morning of May 22, 2002, a man walking his dog near Broad Branch Creek in Rock Creek Park discovered skeletal remains. A sports bra, sweatshirt, black leggings, and sneakers were also collected as evidence after detectives found the items scattered near the body. It had been over a year since Chandra was reported missing. Although police had previously searched the main section of the park, they had not searched the wooded embankment where the skeletal remains were recovered. Dental records confirmed that the skeletal remains were those belonging to Chandra. The leggings found at the scene of the crime had been knotted, leading investigators to theorize that they may have been used to restrain her or possibly strangle her. The remains, after a year of being exposed in the elements, had deteriorated. As a result, the medical examiner could not definitively provide a cause of death, but classified it as a homicide. But there was still the question of how the body got to Rock Creek Park. Because her remains had been found near an area frequented by joggers, one theory was that Chandra may have been out for a jog when she was attacked and dragged into the heavily wooded area. However, there were still those who believed Gary Condit was somehow involved. Police claimed Condit had eventually come clean about the true nature of his relationship with Chandra, but he never publicly admitted to the affair. Nevertheless, it was his sexual indiscretions along with questions surrounding the disappearance of Chandra Levy that ended his political career. 2 months before the skeletal remains were discovered near Broad Branch Creek, Congressman Gary Condit lost his bid for re-election. Data taken from Chandra's previously corrupted laptop indicated she had searched for information about Rock Creek Park prior to her disappearance. It was later alleged that the Metropolitan Police Department had a potential lead, but instead of investigating it, chose to focus exclusively on Gary Condit, whose illicit affair with Chandra gave him motive. However, a man by the name of Ingmar Guandique had been arrested for assaulting several women in Rock Creek Park. Even more shockingly, he had made a full confession about assaulting Chandra Levy, but no formal inquiry had been opened. It would take another 6 years after her body was discovered at Rock Creek Park for police to take action. Perhaps they were motivated by renewed interest in the case, notably an extensive investigation conducted by the Washington Post that revealed that Ingmar Guandique had been named as a suspect years earlier. This forced the Metropolitan Police to do damage control, specifically with the arrest of Guandique. But they didn't have to break much of a sweat to find him. He was already behind bars after being convicted of assaulting 2 other women in Rock Creek Park around the same time that Chandra disappeared. In the case against him, prosecutors theorized that he had attacked Chandra in the park, dragged her to a remote area, tied her and left her to succumb to the exposure. There was also the purported confession that helped link him to the case. Ingmar Guandique was ultimately convicted, sentenced to 60 years in prison. However, 6 years after his conviction, he was granted a new trial after the witness who claimed to have heard the confession had lied. But in a shocking twist, prosecutors announced that they would not seek a new trial. Instead, they moved to have Guandique deported back to El Salvador. Without any additional leads, Chandra Levy's case went cold and remains unsolved. After his election loss in 2001, Condit moved from California and began several successful business ventures, leaving politics for good. Years later, he returned to California, where he became a registered lobbyist for a law firm in Sacramento. He denied ever having an affair with Chandra. The Levy family remained vigilant in their fight for justice, never giving up hope that one day their daughter's killer would be brought to justice.
I watch the shadows fade to gray. Another night, another day. The echoes whisper